Hello, my name is Dr. Henry Munyanduki, and I'll be talking to you about a career in medical virology. Virology falls under the clinical health sciences, which is a field as well that falls under the allied health sciences. So, what is virology? This is the study of viruses, and viruses need no further introduction. To date, 2.3 million people have died due to COVID-19, which is a viral infection that has actually caused this pandemic. So, what are viruses? Viruses are microscopic parasites which infect a very vast host range from bacteria even all the way to humans. And they are the etiological or causative agent of disease. So let's look into the job description of a medical virologist. What does a medical virologist do? Well, they study medically important diseases, medically important viruses, well, the kind that makes one sick, and they're involved in either diagnosis, they're involved in surveillance, screening of antivirals to see whether they are still efficacious or effective or not. They're involved in vaccine development, and I just included here treatment because, believe it or not, certain viruses like adenoviruses have been identified as vehicles to actually transport essential genes that might be lacking in certain individuals in a field called gene therapy. And some viruses as well have shown magnificent, huge potential in treating cancers. These viruses preferentially infect cancer cells and kill them, leaving normal cells unharmed. How cool is that? So, I've broken this talk into two. I'll talk about a typical day in a virology research laboratory to start with, and then I'll talk about a typical day in a clinical research laboratory. So, generally, viruses are invisible to the naked eye, and like the wind, we can only tell of their presence by the effects they cause. And we do a lot of what we call cell culture, where this is a platform where we grow our viruses. And so these are cells that can be derived from as much as insects or animals, and we infect them with viruses. And we can tell by the appearance of these cells after a while whether they're infected. And at times we can actually tell which virus is infecting these particular cells. Or at times we make use of markers, and these markers can be fluorescent markers. They glow when you put UV light. Or we can look at the products, their proteins, what proteins are they showing. And we get to use this kind of sophisticated equipment at times. There's a confocal microscope where you can actually look at cells that are, say infected, and to see if they are showing any markers or not. So I've just put an image here of here where we were looking for sites of multiplication or replication of the virus, and we marked those parts with a green tag. And so here you can actually see that this virus actually multiplies not in the nucleus of the cell, but around or in the cytoplasm, which was quite so cool. So I think this is one of the things that I like a lot about virology. It merges different scientific disciplines. Imagine you're doing microscopy work here, you're a biochemist here, you're a molecular biologist here, you're a computer analyst here, you're an animal technician here, because at times here you look at the effect of certain viruses even in animals, or in, say, vaccine development. When we do what we call preclinical trials, we normally do this in animals. So how exciting is this? So and then I'll talk a little bit about a typical day in a clinical virology lab or clinical virology setting. So in South Africa, you definitely need registration with the Health Professions Council, and this usually is after one's degree They enroll for a year or two. I think it's generally 2 years. It's like an internship where you make a portfolio and then you get that authorization to work with clinical samples or with samples from humans or even animals. So generally, they receive samples from patients that are coming from doctors or hospitals. They extract to try and see the agent that might be contributing to disease. And I've just put here an electron micrograph. This is a picture taken from an electron microscope. It's one of those microscopes that are super, super, super powerful. Here you can literally see the viral particle, and you can tell even their the dimensions. This one is 0.1 or shy of 0.1 times 10 to the minus 6 of a meter. How cool is that? So some of you I know at this point are asking themselves, how do you get in? Generally, you do a degree, an undergraduate degree, and I won't go into these different disciplines. I'm not saying do all of them. I'm saying you do biology or biotechnology or pharmacy or molecular cell biology or clinical sciences, virology. But generally, the idea here is to enroll in a science degree to start with. I know a friend who enrolled in food science, then he later on specialized in virology and now works like a virologist. So when you specialize, generally you take up an honors degree, after which some do a master's degree and others ultimately do a PhD where you're designated doctor of virology. So I won't go into detail about the career prospects and designations here because it depends with the industry where you're working. You may be a virologist, but some people will call you lab technician, lab scientist. I worked as a senior scientific officer reporting to a research officer, but we're both virologists. But I've also included finance here because I noticed and I've seen that there's a lot of emphasis on finance professionals actually recruiting people from the science background or engineering background because they have some analytical skills that they think are important in making money. So how cool is that? I mean, you are not bound because you've done health or clinical sciences. It doesn't mean that you're bound. You can always move. So I've just put here general considerations because you hear different stories from different people. Some have combined their first degree and honors. Some take certain electives or virology, say, courses along with their, say, undergraduate training. Some do summer research projects just to add and to understand more about, say, virology. But one thing I would encourage you is to really focus and work on job shadowing, just, visiting a lab a day or two, just learning and hearing about how and what it means to actually work in that setting. And I'll just talk a little bit about scholarships that, you at times find yourself, especially if you've done these clinical sciences for your honors, typically for your honors, masters, they usually have scholarships for you to do that, which is quite exciting, I think. So my journey, at grade 12, did maths, biology, and chemistry, which I had grades A to C, which are sufficient to enroll for an undergraduate degree. But my university combined the undergrad degree with the honors, after which I worked a little bit for a year, and I went back to school and I specialized. So ultimately, I did a PhD in vaccinology and virology, where we identified a gene important in improving vaccines. And actually, this culminated to an invention, which is quite exciting. So I hope I've presented to you what really clinical virology is or medical virology is, but I'll summarize it in one statement. Virology is one of those fields where your imagination is stretched. You can't see what you're working with at times, where you see emergence or merging, convergence of different scientific disciplines and ultimately you contribute to making lives better, which I think is just phenomenal. Thank you for your time, and hopefully you'll consider a career in medical virology. Thank you.